What are you saying, YouTube? Your boy Rob, aka Card Shark. 1966, when the book 13 Against the Bank was written. So I'll tell you about that. Norman Lee. Norman Lee, who wrote that book, had a lifelong obsession beating the game of roulette. Since he was a little kid, he wanted to beat that game. Very popular in Europe. He's from the UK. And he thinks it's fake because he gets his hands on a book that claims to know how to beat the game of roulette, in theory. Only Norman Lee loans out the book to his friend before he ever gets to read it. And his friend, to Norman, never returned it. But it turns out the friend did return it. He just returned it at the bar when Norman was drunk and having a blackout. See, when drunks have a blackout, they just don't remember. They're fully functional. They do complex tasks like drive a car or gamble, play poker, who knows. But they don't have any recall on what they did. That's a blackout. Very common among alcoholics, can happen frequently. In fact, it's one of the signs of alcoholism. So when Norman's telling the story, what I was getting out of that story, extrapolating, was Norman's a drunk. And he was telling a lot of stories about drinking and monitoring everybody else's drinking. The book has a lot of references to drinking. So I was just hearing an alcoholic. And so he finally reads the book 4 years later, because when he's cleaning out his house, he finds the book. And he's like, oh, my friend did return it. Because he was questioning his friend. His friend didn't return it. And that's why you can stress relationships when you have alcoholism. Now, he reads the book. And the book comes up with, hey, if we reverse a system, in effect, we're getting the casino to play a system, the original system. So if we do a positive progression system, we're in effect making the casino play a negative expectation or a negative progression. Makes no sense. But in their minds, these guys, everything makes sense. So, for example, if your system was the martingale, where you double after your losses, well, now instead of doubling after your losses, you're going to double after your wins. So, and you're going to keep doubling until you either break the bank, which empty the tray, or they close the table. That's what that means. Or you reach the house limit, then you stop. And by that time, you made a lot of money. And in effect, you're making them play the martingale because you're not doubling after your losses, you're doubling after your wins. So in effect, they're doubling after their losses. It's some crazy logic, I know. But in the book, they're using the Lavoisier, so he's going to use the reverse of the Lavoisier. You can look it up if you want to know what it is. Remember, all systems don't work. All systems will be subjected to the house edge of 2.7%. And the only thing you really can't control is the total amount wagered. You can use a system, but just control the total amount wagered. You don't want to use something like a martingale. It's ridiculous because the bets get exponential. So now we got this Norman Lee guy. And back in his day, 1966. So he's got the lifelong obsession. He's got the idea. Let's use the reverse Lavoisier. Let's put a team in there. We're gonna break the bank. That's where we get 13 against the bank. Why? Because they're gonna play all the outside even money bets. The red, the black, the high, the low, the even, the odd. And they're gonna run two teams. So it's 6 and 6. He's man 13. He's taking 10% of the wins, but not putting up any of the money. See, he knows it doesn't work. You want more proof? Back in his day, you couldn't you had to be discreet on how you advertise. You couldn't say, I got a gambling coup going on over here. You had to do a classified ad. Papers were respectable back then. They wouldn't publish that crap. So, put something like investment opportunity. Police come to investigate. One of them, they put an undercover cop in there. This is the best part. The undercover cop examines the system because Norman Lee's training everybody and says, yeah, this is going to work. The man quits his job, quits his pension job. He's got a family, he's got a kid. Norman Lee tries to convince him, maybe he's got a pension job, maybe you should stick with that. This is no guarantee. This guy at least had somewhat of a conscience, unlike the goat, who's just totally misleading with the lies and the philosophy of quit your job and everything else. So, and win every time. This guy's saying he might not win. Anyway, so the cop comes to investigate. And he's like, yeah, it works. So he joins the team. My favorite guy that joined the team, though, he's the best. He's a felon, and he's a burglar. And he read that ad, and he had no inclination whatsoever to invest. He was just going over to case the house, scope it out, see if it's worth stealing. When he got there, instead had to listen to Norman, he's like, hey, this might work. Hey, let me join the team. And the burglar joined the team. Man, they go to France, and of course, it's a book, it's a fairy tale. They run up, they break the bank, everything's great. publish the book, make even more money. But guess what? Word on the street is what I heard. Norman Lee at the end was flat fucking broke, living in like a bed and breakfast or a hostel, and selling his system, saying I can't even go in the casino, I'm banned. So he's selling his system for $300, and people would go over to meet him in person, they'd buy the system, and they'd see him all disheveled, dirt under his fingernails. He probably died alone, broke, and a drunk. And so, hey, you take your chances. You know what I'm saying?